So far you've learned about function notation to a certain point and how to use it. Now you're going to be using operations involving function notation. So you have f of x equals x cubed, g of x equals 4x minus 3, and h of x equals 1 over x. You're asked to find what these things are. So f of 4 means go to this, replace x with 4. That's going to be 4 to the third power, which is 64. G of 4 means you're going to go to the g of x function, replace the x with 4. You're going to have 4 times 4 minus 3, which is 13. H of 4, likewise, you're going to go to the h of x function, replace the x with 4. You're going to have 1/4, which is the same thing as 0.25. As far as the operations go, for multiplication, addition, subtraction is not included here, but subtraction will work very similar to this, and division, basically all you have to do is like, well, h times g of 4 is the same thing as h of 4 times g of 4, which of course, based off of what we've already looked at, is 0.25, because that's what h of 4 was, times 13, because that's what g of 4 was. And if you multiply those together, you get 3.25. F plus g of 4 is the same thing as f of 4 plus g of 4, which is going to be 64 plus 13, and that's going to give you 77. And it works the same way with division. H over g of 4 is going to be equal to h of 4 over g of 4, which is 0.25 over 13. 0.25, again, is the same thing as 1/4, and if I divide 1/4 by 13, the same thing as multiplying it by 1/13. And then I would multiply these two, I'd get 1 over 52, which is probably the best answer to give, because if you try to write this as a decimal, you'd be approximating, and you can have rounding errors if you do that. It works the same way with tables too. You notice that you have your x values here that are defined. You really don't know anything else. I mean, -8, -1, 0, 2, and 4 are the only values of x you know that these two functions are defined for. So when I do f plus g of -8, that's the same thing as f of -8 plus g of -8. So f of -8 is 3. G of -8 is -9. So basically I have 3 plus -9 here, and 3 plus -9 is a -6. For subtraction, the same way, except now I'm doing f minus g of 4. So I'm going to be doing f of 4 minus g of 4. Well, according to the table, f of 4 is 7. G of 4 is -1. So I'm going to be doing 7 minus a -1. And of course, subtracting a negative is the same thing as adding. So this becomes 7 plus 1, or 8. F times g of 0. Now notice that you're not, when you have function notation again, the function letters are indicating which formula or part of the table you're looking at. The number that's in parentheses indicates the value you're substituting in. This is not f times g times 0. This is not f minus g times 4. Make sure you notice that this is not multiplication going on between these two. Between f and g, yes. This is f of 0 times g of 0. And we look at those values. F of 0 is 6, g of 0 is 2. So I basically have 6 times 2 here, which of course is going to be 12. And g over f of -1, again, that's g of -1 over f of -1. When I look at these, g of -1 is 9, f of -1 is 0. So I'd be attempting to do 9 divided by 0. You can't divide by 0. It's undefined as a result. So as the result of this, and by the directions, you should be entering DNE here for does not exist. That is the end of this problem, and that is the end of this video. If you have any additional questions, please make sure to bring them up during class.